Hello and welcome. It's your weekend Managing Madrid podcast. This is your host, Gabe Lesra, from a really shockingly cold Washington, D.C. I guess not shockingly. I am joined by Kiyan Sabani. Kiyan, how's it going?
I'm great. It's also shockingly cold in Madrid, by the way. And I find every time I'm at the Bernabeu, it's either freezing or my scalp is burning from the sun. And yesterday, my fingers were so numb, I couldn't type on the laptop. And then until the game started and Florentino turned on the heat for us, and it got a bit better. But I
like the idea of Florentino not having the heat on to try to get the people to stop writing so many tweets before the game starts.
Yes.
We're also, and so obviously Kiyan is in Madrid. You got to see the awesome, wonderful match from this weekend. I'm also joined by Arvind. So I understand you didn't watch the match live.
Yeah, I didn't, and I got a lot of abuse for that, not because people were mad that I didn't watch it, but because they were, really happy that I didn't. So I got a ton of messages that are like, don't ever watch a Madrid game ever again, or, go support another team. Obviously, mostly tongue-in-cheek, but, it was so many that I actually made a video of it, and, yeah.
But don't you have a track record for this? It's happened before or something?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, it's it's kind of these select moments, right, where it's oh, I jinxed the match and it's really just chance. And people have decided to pick on those moments, and it's a running joke now that I constantly jinx Madrid, and then if I watch a Barcelona match, Barcelona win, even though Barcelona win 95% of the time. But it's funny, so I play along with it.
But you do have this voodoo thing about you where the Sergio Ramos article. Ever since you gave our tactics away to our opposing coaches, everyone has marked Ramos out of the game.
It's so good. The abuse that we got after we put that on Facebook is so funny.
There were some people who were actually really mad about that. We got some legitimately angry messages about people, asking us to stop giving Real Madrid's tactics away.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was referencing. But yeah, so we've got very good match for Real Madrid. Unfortunately, they did not pick up any points on Barcelona, who won 2-0 against Villarreal in Villarreal. So fair enough. But yeah, great match from Madrid with a depleted back line managing to hold Sevilla to 0 goals. A Sevilla side that, let's be clear, is still a good attacking side despite their obvious defensive issues. And then putting 5 in with a brace from Cristiano Ronaldo, which is also awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually a bit shocked how bad Sevilla were. Well, I mean, we knew they were having a bad season. But they had started to show signs of life. And I don't know, it kind of was hand in hand with the same time Berizzo announced publicly that he was battling cancer. And I don't know if it was a thing that just kind of lit a fire and the team said, okay, we're going to do this for Berizzo. And then you have all these distractions with Nzonzi wanting to leave, and the team all of a sudden, against Real Madrid, they looked shockingly bad. I mean, Nolito was a black hole. They had a couple moments in the first half where they tried to grow into the game. They got the ball out wide to Jesus Navas, and that lasted 5-10 minutes. It was crazy how bad they were, and defensively, yeah. I mean, it started with the first goal, Nacho. I mean, it was a bit shocking.
I mean, it's shocking. And what really stood out to me was how much the second Madrid goal, the first from Cristiano, really just broke their spirits, and they just kind of lost all interest in even trying to get into this match.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching the match, and I was obviously watched it on replay, so I didn't have as much emotional investment, and I was just looking to see what the tactics were and everything. So the opening minutes, I think the Nacho goal really kind of just flattened them. Because I was actually impressed with the first 20 minutes of what I saw from Sevilla in terms of their pressing, and I wasn't necessarily that impressed with what we were doing because I thought we looked a bit sloppy and disconnected in the final third. But I think the Nacho goal, which came really early on, forced them to really come on to us. It forced them to pressure us very high, and then all it took was one chance, right? We had this beautiful sweeping move through their press that resulted in a Ronaldo goal, and I think that just completely deflated Sevilla. That along with, because I'm sure the Nacho goal was in the back of their minds, right? It was just really horrible defending, and
Right.
it was a lucky goal essentially, and then that combined with the really, really beautiful goal from us that deflated them, and simultaneously everyone just seemed to be lifted. After that, we just started playing so well, and I thought that disconnection I saw, it changed. Everyone started to understand where everyone else was moving, and when you combine that with a Sevilla side that felt that everything was going against them, it was pretty easy to see how they collapsed. Because I think that shows some mental weakness, right? Because they shouldn't necessarily collapse because of that, but they did. They just simply gave up. In a sense, I don't think they really just gave up, but their quality of play subconsciously dropped because they felt like everything was against them and they knew they weren't going to win. And then it just became too easy for us.
Yeah, and this is kind of a symptom of kind of the larger illness that has been plaguing this Sevilla side this season, where they, when they go down really hard. Like they allowed, 6+ goals to a Russian side in the Champions League. Like that's not something that is an elite team does. So like it's the kind of, they go for it, and they're capable of these historic and monumental like comebacks and putting a bunch of goals on the board. But when it goes wrong, it just seems to all go absolutely catastrophically wrong for this Sevilla side. And as soon as they felt it turning against them, you could kind of tell that this wasn't going to be one of the nights where they're gonna put up a huge fight.
Yeah,
I think. Go ahead,
Yeah, and I just wanted to say because. Like the way I put it, it sounds like I was like pretty critical of our performance, but no, I thought tactically we're actually solid. What I was criticizing is that like essentially because I don't know if you guys noticed it, but in like the opening 10 minutes or so, it just looked like our chemistry was off a little bit. You'd see, Ronaldo try to play a 1-2 with Asensio, and Asensio wasn't making the kind of run that Ronaldo wanted, and then passes were just kind of missing their target because players just didn't seem to understand where the other player was running. But I thought tactically, because I don't know how much that's something Zidane can control. I mean, I think there's a little bit he can, but when I speak tactically in terms of structure, I thought we were all right because it was a 4-4-2. It wasn't a diamond or anything. I think Asensio roamed a bit, but generally we had our wide players kind of stick to the flanks and move into the half spaces, and our fullbacks moved up, and we had the two central midfielders who generally kind of stayed. They held position. And that kind of stable structure helped us grow into the game. I thought it also helped us a lot with Sevilla's press because, as I mentioned before, I thought it was good in the beginning, but we had Modric and Kroos who were moving in between the lines of Sevilla's initial block really, really well, receiving the ball and then pinging it out wide, and we had players nicely spaced so that we could pass our way out of Sevilla's press with these nice 10-meter balls all across the pitch. And it was really nice to watch. And that's kind of what I've been talking about before, right? Like having a stable structure so players know where to pass the ball. They can kind of intuitively move through, the opponent's defense and work their way towards goal. And I thought as we grew into the game, we saw that a lot in the first half. And it was something quite aesthetically pleasing to watch.
I wanted to touch on something both of you guys said. One was Gabe talking about Sevilla and just kind of like the state of them this season. And for large stretches of the season, Berizzo just had no idea what his starting lineup was. And even like two players who are probably their two best players this season, Joaquin Correa and Banega, just weren't even starting consistently. You had moments of like Ganso being the guy, then Pizarro sliding in, and to me, just nothing was clear about what they wanted to do and who they wanted to use. And it was clear to me like they just were not able to adequately replace Jovetic. They weren't adequately able to replace I'm blanking on the other guy they lost last season. Okay, it'll come to me. But at any rate, like I think it's just not clear to me what they're trying to do. And then Om's point about how it like started the game. Even after Nacho's goal, I felt like we still really hadn't seen any foreshadowing of how the game was going to be played out because Sevilla were still trying to grow into the game, and Real Madrid right before Asensio made that, created the second goal, there was definitely a period of stagnancy. Like, we didn't really have a clear way to plow through. We were kind of just recycling possession, and it kind of looked just unimaginative. And Asensio gets the ball, and all of a sudden he drifts centrally and shows us an outlet, and he turns and he cuts through. He just goes and he kind of breaks the traditional method of our passing structure and just tries to create something on his own. And Sevilla at that point just completely were not expecting it, and they couldn't close down the pass to Ronaldo. And I thought that was such a key moment in the game where Asensio just turns on the switch, shows an outlet, drifts inside from the left wing. And I thought it was that moment that really Sevilla just started to crumble, and the game was changed a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I also want to mention something that I think I said after the match was over, but something that I think is important to mention in this type of match, that Madrid managed, I mean, like I said, Madrid managed to keep a clean sheet against the Sevilla side. And if you look at the passing network, you're absolutely right on. Like, this is a very stable, you can tell it's a stable formation just by looking at these passing maps, because you actually can see the 4-4-2 structure, which is not something you can see all the time in the diamond, especially, where you'll have Isco in some random position, and it kind of changes game by game. But in this one, it's very clear that there's two central midfielders, with Modric a little bit playing behind Kroos, and then Vasquez and Asensio on the wings, and Cristiano and Benzema a little bit ahead of those two. So like it's actually quite cool to look at. But I wanted to mention on top of that I think it was very cool. And you did a video about some of this, but how impressed I was with Jesus Vallejo and Nacho. Once again, man, Vallejo really just proving his absolute class and just putting on, I thought, a masterful performance through the whole match, just like with his interceptions, with his tackling. He's just an absolute pearl, gentlemen. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, that's just basically a spot-on assessment. I mean, a lot of the discussion, obviously, about this match was about our attackers, right? Because we scored 5 goals. But I made the video on Nacho and Vallejo because I felt their match was it was almost perfect, the way they played throughout the game. And I thought that was worth noting because oftentimes we forget about our defenders and how hard of a job they have. And I thought, especially because we were so worried about not having Varane and Ramos, that was worth talking about how well they played, because they made us forget about that worry completely. And I'm especially interested with what I've seen from Vallejo this season, because I remember saying on an earlier podcast, or I think I remember saying this, is that I was worried a little bit about a future Vallejo-Varane partnership, because I thought they were too similar, and that I said that Vallejo would kind of need to step up into that Ramos role a little bit if that partnership was going to work. So he would have to be more aggressive and step out of the defensive line while Varane tried to sweep up behind players. And everything I've seen from Vallejo so far this season is that he's very comfortable in that role. Either Zidane's told him to do it, or he's just automatically doing it, but he is using his superb anticipation and matching that with a far more aggressive mindset than what I saw with him in the Bundesliga. And he's really stepping out and taking his game to attackers at every opportunity. And it's taking people by surprise, because attackers will move in between the lines. They think they have a lot of space, and then either before they receive the ball or when they receive it, Vallejo is just right behind them, hounding attackers. And he's either going to clip the ball away from an attacker or intercept a pass. And it just allows us to win the ball back in situations where you don't think it's obvious.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabe, sorry.
No, I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm happy to let you chat, Kiyan, but I just think it's borne out, right, in Madrid's, the way that so what you were saying about, Vallejo closing people down when they've received the ball. So that is borne out in not necessarily in the number of shots that Sevilla got, but in the obvious bad quality of the shots. So like every single one of Sevilla's shots essentially if you look at this data, it was despite being from, say, a good position, was very clearly a shot that where the player was very closely covered. And that is borne out when you take 11 shots but only have an expected goal of 0.36. That is a classic understanding of a well-played defensive game in terms of just hounding players and making sure you have bodies in between players when they receive the ball. And on top of that, just the ability that Vallejo has to kind of bait a bad pass that's slow and on the ground and then sneak in, as soon as he sees the ball played, he starts running at the attacker and to lift that ball out from behind him. It's almost the best understanding of this kind of anticipation that I've seen on almost any level. I can't remember a player who's quite as good at this particular aspect of defending as him. It's really uncanny. And I would say I think Busquets has a similar thing as a center midfielder, but that's amazing as a center midfielder too. Like one of the greatest center defensive midfielders. Of course, he's going to know how to intercept balls, but Vallejo combines his strong ability to tackle with, on top of that, a absolutely uncanny ability to read where the ball is going and get there before the attacker. Very impressive.
I was pleasantly surprised when chose to do his kind of tactical post-game video on those two central defenders, because when you look at this game and you see what the headlines are, it's the counterattacks, it's the Real Madrid finally scoring, it's Ronaldo finally scoring in La Liga, it's the team finally playing really well. At home even, and maybe the stuff that you guys are talking about kind of gets lost in the shuffle because all the attention is on the other side. And I was pleasantly surprised to see Holmes' tactical video. I think it's interesting to point out you talked about the Vallejo-Varane partnership and you were worried about that. I think the unanimous main concern was the Vallejo and Nacho partnership. Heading into the season, because we saw how Bayern hurt Nacho on set pieces in the Champions League. We've seen Vallejo, the way he defends crosses in the Bundesliga, and you pair them together, and you just kind of sweat a bit. I think, while it was a good trial run, in my opinion, we still didn't see Sevilla really test the two. If I'm the opposing coach and I see those two, I'm kind of making it a point. Again, it's not like Sevilla played even well enough to even execute any kind of game plan. But they went and tried to go down to the middle. And this is kind of bread and butter stuff for Vallejo and Nacho, too. They combined for 9 interceptions. Vallejo reads the game masterfully. We know this. And he can distribute. He's very comfortable coming at our press, even. But Sevilla just didn't really test them in terms of set pieces or crosses or anything like that. And, I'm almost cautious because on one hand, I think just Sevilla were bad, in so many ways, and they could have tested Real Madrid more. On the other hand, it's not fair to Real Madrid to take credit away from them because I think they played really well. Having said that, regardless of what it was, I think it was mostly Real Madrid playing well, and the timing was great. We are heading into the Club World Cup, which is terrifying, and I just wish it didn't exist, but. We have the Clásico as our next, kind of official game. And when you look at the calendar and you're like, wow, this is great timing.
Yeah, you just mentioned how I was talking about the Varane-Vallejo partnership. I just want to clarify that when I say that, I'm talking about in a post-Ramos era. So I wasn't necessarily talking about this season because obviously the Vallejo-Nacho partnership is more concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would also note, Kiyan, this worry about the Club World Cup is not misplaced. This is historically a terrible time for it's arguably why the European champion has never repeated until Madrid last year, right? Because on top of all the other stuff that goes along with it, everyone trying to beat you, and also that it does take some luck to become the champion. You also have to do this stupid tournament when every other team is getting a good break. or like just continuing their normal rhythm. You have to fly somewhere and play this stupid tournament against teams whose entire goal in life is just to play you, even if they're way worse, and try to beat you and hammer you physically is the best way to do it. So it sucks. And then on top of that, it's like a few games in like 5 days. So like it's annoying. And then so it's just more minutes that are essentially meaningless and you have to sort of play your good players because it's a very big embarrassment if you don't win these stupid cups. So it's it's annoying, and it's something that we shouldn't undervalue heading into the biggest game of the season so far for Madrid in what is an absolute. It's not just a must find a result. It's a must win Clásico. I can't remember one really in our collective experience with Madrid where it was quite this important for the Liga season for Madrid not to even draw. Like, they need to win this match. So
it's a bit wild that
I cannot.
The first time we might see BBC together could be in the Club World Cup this season. It's staggering that it's taken this long. And even then, we have no guarantee. But we also know that Zidane has completely got rid of this concept and idea that, we must ease Bale into it. No, like that ideology is over. Like we're gonna rush him. We're gonna get him into the game. If he's fit, we need to get him match fit for the Clásico. So it's very possible we see those three this week.
What I'm thinking about is why we haven't taken Vallejo on this trip. Like I don't get it.
Yeah,
they didn't bring Vallejo. What's the point of that? Oh,
I mean.
Infuriating. I didn't even know that.
There's absolutely no good reason for it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I'm really just like at a loss. Like I have no idea.
Well, it's strange. It's like Vallejo's so far down the pecking order in so many ways, and like he didn't make the Champions League squad, and even though Real Madrid had qualified and they were guaranteed second place, and we justified that by saying, well, there's only so many selection, so many places you can kind of pick for the Champions League. It's limited substitutions, but even then we didn't really feel right saying it. We were just trying to find some reason. Are you sure? By the way, I think he in the squad.
Really? Because I heard a bunch of people saying he wasn't. Maybe he was put in after we had injuries.
He was in the Champions League squad, but I think he actually is in this squad. Double check it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In
that case, crisis.
This is worth looking up because otherwise I'm going to be annoyed all day.
Okay, so I'm looking, so I'm looking at the one Lucas posted today. Oh no, Valle was in there, so it must have happened. He must have been put in later because either I just hallucinated or I heard a bunch of people on Twitter asking why Vallejo wasn't in the squad.
I think you hallucinated. What was in your chai tonight?
So I apologize to all the listeners to the massive heart attack I gave to them because Vallejo is in the squad and we didn't make that stupid a mistake.
I thought I was taking crazy pills because I was like, oh my god, I should know this. Why don't I know this? So I was freaking out, and then anyways, crisis averted. Vallejo's there. He probably won't even play, but he's there.
It would be too stupid. I mean, like, it's like the problem is that this season, like the player rotation issues, like this is totally the type of thing that I would have I could totally have seen that shit happening that way.
And we've made dumb roster decisions before, the Cheryshev thing. So
right. All right, so let's continue talking. I think another big standout from this match, and I think that it absolutely is worth saying, the player that I was most worried about, man, Ashraf, came in and really, really stepped up. I thought he was good on essentially every facet of the match today. I had previously criticized him on the offensive end. I thought he was extremely good, obviously bagging his first ever senior team goal, which is awesome. I think he's the first Moroccan player to score for Real Madrid, which is also awesome. I mean, like it's really good. I thought he had a great game.
Yeah, I mean, I could have easily included him in my video. I just wanted to focus on the center backs because they defended like in a slightly different way, right? But Ashraf showed his defensive intelligence today. I think versus Tottenham, even when everyone was like, okay, this is like Ashraf's first real test with Real Madrid. I think defensively he was all right. I think the question with him is his decisions offensively. I mean, versus Sevilla, I thought it was all right. I think there were some crossing decisions again where, a player would cut back to want to receive a pass near the edge of the box and put it to the center. But that's going to come with time. It takes a lot of understanding between the fullback and the complicated movements that, Ronaldo and Benzema make in the box. But defensively, he's shown a lot of maturity this season, and he showed it versus Sevilla. And that's something that puts a lot of confidence in a fan. It is something we don't need to worry about, right? And that's just something good to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think even when the criticism came in against Tottenham, especially, and Gabe and I agree. I don't know if you were at the podcast at that time, but defensively we had no issues with him. And I think even in the games against some of the really bad games that Real Madrid went through, like one against Girona was another one. He looked okay defensively. He has tools, and he has IQ without the ball that's really high defensively, and that has been huge, because if you're not having a good game offensively, but you can bring that to the table, it's a massive asset regardless. There were at least five examples in this game that I'm going to extract from my column, just about just 5 really amazing reads defensively. He also, I just checked, he had 5 tackles in this game, far and away the most in the game, and all of them just by good positioning. And they weren't like lunging, like trying to get it like last ditch, just pure like right place, not gambling, knowing where to be. And offensively, we saw his pace. There was never a question of his pace. His pace was phenomenal too. Like, this was, to me, out of all games we've seen from Ashraf this season, to me this was the one game where you could say like Ashraf, he's arrived. He has a long way to go. He's a lot of things to kind of still perfect, but I was really impressed with him.
Logan agrees with you. Yeah. Apologize. There's someone walking. I can see from the window where my studio is. He's he's in the mix. I just underlining that, like, honestly, I've never really questioned his defensive acumen as a first team player, and that's pretty cool for someone as young and interesting as him. It really is just coming down to offensive stuff, and that's the place where he just doesn't seem to quite be on the level. But I agree, Om. I think that's a thing that comes with time and more training. Like, when you're able to anticipate where your forwards are going to be and where they're going to want the ball, and then you got to be able to put it there with your crosses. That was the big issue in the Tottenham match, where he just was overhitting his crosses a lot, or like hitting him right into his defender, which is another real negative. But even in this match, I thought he stepped and showed a lot more. I mean, I also think that Sevilla probably, one of the reasons that he got as many tackles as he did is that Sevilla did think, well, let's at least go at him a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, he does seem to be the weak link in this defense, so they're going to try to go at him. But he really stepped up and showed that it's not that was a mistake, but that wasn't going to be an easy open door for them to attack all night.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, right, like, the coming with time type thing. Like, it isn't easy, because a lot of people were mad over the season about, like, players not finding Ronaldo's runs, and it isn't easy for our players to deal with it the same way it isn't easy for opposition defenses to deal with it, because Ronaldo does it so quickly. Like, he'll be walking one way, he'll fake, and then suddenly he's in behind a defender, and it takes a special kind of play and a special kind of understanding between the attacker and the passer to understand and immediately react to what Ronaldo's doing. Because we've seen a lot of times with Asensio and Isco, they see what Ronaldo's done, but by the time they can make the decision to make the pass, it's too late. And the same thing will go for a fullback aiming for a forward in the box. So if it's difficult for world-class players like Asensio and Isco, it's definitely going to be difficult for someone as young as Ashraf.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's take it up, move it up to the next line. The kind of structure, dictates that we now talk a little bit about the midfield, who I think played a generally really solid match. And I think it was very interesting to see, for example, Toni Kroos actually putting in a defensive shift from time to time, a real one, right? Like, with a lot of energy. but also like it was cool to see finally what this structure would look like as just kind of a classic 4-4-2 with Ronaldo as the second striker and facilitating play and getting in and whatnot. And that was an interesting line. I mean, obviously, I think Asensio has finally had the game that I was waiting for from him. He had a really, really great match, and he was everywhere and had obviously it was his brilliance that kind of created the second goal. So I don't know, who was your standout player, guys, from the midfield for Madrid today or yesterday?
I mean, it has to be Asensio for me. Like,
you said Asensio, Kiyan?
Yeah. I mean, I to me, he's probably the best player on the pitch, like including everyone. And I mean, 5 key passes and just a constant threat. Sorry, 6 key passes, and he was the one for me who broke the game, like I mentioned earlier. I thought Modric and Kroos were good. I don't know, like I honestly, my opinion, I don't think Kroos was otherworldly defensively, and I still think like I'm amazed at how much energy conservation that he receives in terms of I don't know if I've ever seen him sprint back on defense, and it was something that was really apparent to me just watching him from an overhead view, just watching him play and seeing where he is constantly. He's a lot of things to me go unpunished defensively because he just is allowed to let his man sprint back, and he just gets to stay and just show us an outlet, which could be by design given the way it kind of unfolds. But yeah, to me, Modric was also good, but Kroos was very good with the ball. He was very important in this game. There's no question, especially offensively. But Asensio for me was a standout. Lucas Vazquez played really well. It's interesting in a game where you look at the initial lineup and everybody's kind of foreshadowing this cross festival of just get the ball to Asensio, Lucas Vazquez, Marcelo, and Ashraf, and sit back and just be blown away by how terrible it looks. But I think it was really flipped, and it was fun to see a fresh scheme. It was fun to see Asensio and Lucas Vazquez drift centrally. It was fun to see these cutting runs.
All right, that was a little bit of technical issues. We're back. Apologies. Kiyan you were just saying that Madrid's attack was a little bit more balanced and had a lot less of that kind of shove it to the sides kind of mentality.
Yeah, by the way, quick interjection. My apologies because I don't have my mic with me in Madrid, so I'm using just an Apple headphone mic. So apologies to all our amazing patrons who paid for my new mic and they're not getting it tonight in the next couple weeks. But I think I kind of fixed some of the issues. But the crossing in this game, the overall feeling from a lot of fans and like the anxiety that a lot of people had heading into the season, looking at that lineup and seeing that 4-4-2 and Lucas Vazquez starting on the right and Asensio assuming he was on the left, maybe kind of having a free roll, was that it was a foreshadowing to a plethora of crosses where the ball would just go out to Vazquez, Asensio, Marcelo, and Ashraf, and we would have to sit back and just watch a ton of crosses come in, probably inefficiently and probably be vulnerable in the counterattack. It was nice because it was actually a completely new offensive scheme. It was fresh. It was efficient in the counterattack. There were only 8 crosses in this game, and the season average at the Bernabeu was 31, which is a staggering difference. And not only that, the 8 crosses that came in, the majority of them were actually very good quality, and they were difficult for Sevilla to defend. It was unpredictable for Real Madrid. It was nice diversity in the attack. It was efficient. There was a lot of movement down the central channels. I think Asensio had a really nice balance of roaming, but also being dangerous on the flank. And Kroos and Modric also very surgical with their passing. So, to me, that was a surprising tidbit from this game that really set the tone and was a needed sample size for Zidane to look at in terms of what could work on.
Just as another option tactically, right? To see and to encourage teams to the team to kind of go after, even when they feel like they need to find a goal, you don't always have to move around to the flanks. And I think that's going to be especially important in matches with teams that have a little more stuck-in defenses than Sevilla, obviously. So let's move. Oh, go ahead, Ellen.
if I could just because I feel like there's an important caveat to add to that, in that I think the reason we saw that kind of approach was because Sevilla was pressing so high, and that once we broke into the final third, a lot of the times there just weren't as many defenders, and we had offensive superiority in a lot of areas, and there was a lot of space to play good balls, so we could afford not to play the ball out wide and just cross, because Sevilla's defense wasn't set and we had a lot of space to work the ball around in. So I still think that even when Sevilla was in a more deep set defense, we did a good job of looking for alternate routes of penetration. But I wouldn't be more than cautiously optimistic, because even against, like, for example, Atletico Madrid last season, when we played that counter-attacking game and we broke through their high press, there weren't a lot of crosses there. But that was because of the type of defense we were playing against. I don't know how much this is going to change when we play like a side that decides to sit deep and asks us to penetrate from slower possession play. But I do think that there were some positive signs with the way we diversified our approach.
Well, it was Sevilla's high press in this game. I noticed, like, especially on the first couple goal kicks that Keylor took, Sevilla opted to press really high, and Real Madrid gave the ball away first couple times. And then after that, they kind of found some rhythm and comfort, and Kroos helped stretch the field a bit, and they did better. And if they started to, again, cautiously, as you say, cautiously, I felt like I was watching Real Madrid, the older version of Real Madrid from the Super Cup, who was comfortable coming out of the press. And then Sevilla's press kind of just fell apart after that. And I found like midway through the first half, Real Madrid were able to get out of it, and I don't remember seeing it much from Sevilla after that, not efficiently anyway. So maybe, also to consider that the team also had a lot of press-resistant players, everyone from Vallejo to Kroos and Modric, and Asensio showing as an outlet once it got there. And once it got to that point, Sevilla had just crumbled, and they weren't able to defend the counter-attack with all the space that was left.
So let's just finally just end this discussion with just another tip of the hat to Cristiano Ronaldo, who was incredibly dangerous and clinical. Just a great game from Cristiano. And I know we're going to talk about this, but Karim Benzema also, I thought, not as bad a game as some of the people would have you believe. But I'm interested in what your take. I mean, we're going to talk about it too, but I'm interested in what your take about the two strikers was. And if you want to go first.
I mean, I was fine with both of their performances. I was impressed. I was really, really happy when I saw Ronaldo played through on goal, and he was in a 1-versus-1 opportunity where he had to decide what he was going to do on the fly, how he's going to finish that, and he did it decisively, because that tells me, all right, his confidence is back, because he missed like 2 or 3 1-versus-1 chances earlier in the season, and as it always is with him and most other finishers, when they're missing those chances, it's down to indecision. It's them second guessing where they're going to place the ball, and then they either fire it straight at the keeper or they miss. And I was really, really happy to see that, because, like I said, it tells me that Ronaldo's back, essentially. And just his all-around game was good. He was getting involved. He wasn't afraid to take players on. And I thought Benzema was good because he complemented Ronaldo well. He showed us an outlet to break the press. He was unlucky not to score on a header. This isn't one of the games where I think it's like, it makes sense to pick on Benzema, because we won 5-0 and Benzema was clearly a key part in facilitating that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to compare the performances of Benzema and Mayoral, from Dortmund and here. Despite Mayoral scoring against Dortmund, I thought the team would have just been fine without him in that game, because he touched the ball less than Keylor did, and you look at Benzema's involvement in this game, it's way more involved than Mayoral was against Dortmund, for example. I still, obviously between the two, we're just happy because Ronaldo looked really good, and he was efficient, he was scoring, he was happy, and he was involved. I'm still wondering when we get to the point where we realize that we can just play Ronaldo as a striker. again, you look at the passing maps, and Benzema's not really heavily involved. Like, yeah, we can talk about his space and the creation you make, and the space creation and stuff. I'm still waiting for the day we just pack the midfield, reinforce the defensive transition, have an extra binding agent in attack, an extra support for Ronaldo. I'm still waiting for the day where we just kind of stick to that. I don't think we'll ever see it, but to me, like, when you look at the the eye test, we still, I think we can, again, I just don't know how much of this sample size against Sevilla we extract and we implement. But I just think that the team can still get away with even better performance and results if we opt to play Ronaldo up top. Not that this, I'm being really unreasonable right now saying this is 5-0. I'm just like kind of.
I mean, I would mention just because like I'm not trying to like shill or whatever, but like it's one of the things I think is interesting is that we have seen a lot of success when Ronaldo doesn't just play at striker, like where he is allowed to drift to the wing and where he drifts back into the center. And one of the things, that's what I was trying to point out in the last show, Kiyan, about the match against Dortmund, right, was that Cristiano like actually was able to move out to the wing and cut around wide and drop deep and even play some defense and regain the ball a couple of times. And in matches where he was at the sole 9, I feel like his movement would be restricted a little bit more than maybe his, especially at this point in his career, is best. Maybe later where he really does have a lot more. I mean, the guy is an animal. Like, he is the most physically fit person on Real Madrid, even at 32. But look, I wonder whether it's smart to like box him into that role, and maybe like giving him more of a roaming role is actually a really helpful thing. And that's why like having Benzema up there to draw defenders out and whatnot is useful.
Yeah, I think I don't think you're wrong. I think we know that's true, and we know that last time we've heard him speak about it anyway, he doesn't like playing as a 9. But to me, I think like too bad. Just figure it out. You're amazing at it. You're probably the best number 9 in the world if you just play that position. But I think the point is that if he's a number 9. He doesn't need to be a stagnant 9, like a traditional 9. He can still do that drifting and roaming. And I think we have seen him do that before. I just think that, I mean, this will also, this kind of this will change a little bit if Gareth Bale ever comes back healthy. Because he is so good at getting Ronaldo involved and feeding the ball to Ronaldo that I think that his presence alone would help shift Ronaldo into a position where he can take advantage of being, a 9.
Yeah.
But then again, Bale can do that even if Ronaldo's not a 9. But I'm just saying, I think the presence of Bale would help with that problem.
Mm-hmm. All right. Unless either of you have any more things from your notes that you want to jump in on, I think we can go ahead and take some questions.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's just go right in. So, just kind of a technical question here, I think. Anton Hackberg asks us, does XG add chances into the equation that the referee did a mistake on? For example, a chance that was deemed offside that in reality wasn't, or like the situation against Bilbao where Ronaldo had a huge opportunity to score, but the referee shut down the play because Modric was fouled. So I can't say exactly, but I'm almost certain that XG does not count chances like that because they aren't chances, right? Like it just doesn't matter because they would never have counted because we don't have referees. I mean, the referees are actors that prevent chances, right? So like if they don't subtract, the only way that would make sense is if you would subtract chances where the referees made the mistake but there was a goal scored or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So like I just don't think XG even messes around at all with correct or incorrect refereeing decisions.
No, it doesn't. And I will, what it does though, so like I don't want to give the impression that expected goals doesn't take into account some kind of situation where you think, oh, that should be a shot and it isn't. And there's an important differentiation to make here because like recently there's been a kind of like I wouldn't say rift, but there's been an argument in the expected goals community about how it should be calculated. And now there's 2 versions of doing it. So there's the Opta version, which has been the most common version, and it's where it started from, which only counts shots as its only event. And then there's the Stratabet version, which counts shots, and it also counts situations where there's almost always going to be a shot. So like if you play across the 6 yard box and the player just completely he swings his foot at it and it just misses it, that is counted as a chance in that situation. It's not counted as a shot, but it's counted as a chance. And so so basically the Stratabet version also takes into account other things like defensive pressure and stuff. It takes into account situations that are not as concrete as, it kind of takes into account like more subjective situations. So I felt like that was worth putting that out there, because that's not what Anton is like specifically talking about. He is asking a larger question about what expected goals takes into account.
Right, but I agree. That is actually really useful, and that actually explains some of the difference between to the two main expected goal people that put their charts out right after games on Twitter. 11 Tegan 11 and Mike Cayley, who does his work for I think ESPN and 538 and whatnot. He's very smart, but I think he also uses the I don't actually really know which one uses which. I'm pretty sure
Cayley and 11 Tegan 11, they use Opta. So
okay.
the Stratabet people are kind of lesser known at this point, because they're coming through with that data, and like they don't have as many followers because they're starting with the newer method. But like there's people like Ray Hamill, Ashwin Raman, if I'm saying his last name correctly, who I think uses Stratabet data. So like there are guys out there who use that formula instead. But if you're on Twitter and you're following this stuff, most of the well-known guys you follow use the Opta. Yeah.
So can you just say the title or the people's names so that we can find them and follow them so we can see the difference between the two?
Okay, I gotta find it. I mean, maybe I'll say it at the end.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. But yeah, anyway, so it's an interesting question. We've been dealing with a lot of expected goals stuff recently because for whatever reason, over the last couple of weeks, like the greater soccer media has been discussing it a lot, and it's partially because Jose Mourinho, like big get by the way for the expected goals community, made some comment about it after some United game a couple weeks ago. And so then everyone just kind of had a meltdown. All the kind of like gut instinct, there is no good statistics. People were very upset about that. So that's why you're hearing so much about it right now. All right, Christopher McCormick asked us, what exactly did Zidane learn from this game that he could apply consistently? What did you guys make of the midfield on defense? What were there were times that Modric and Kroos were dropping into the box with Ronaldo and Benz in midfield.
I didn't notice the Modric and Kroos dropping into the box as much. Maybe I missed something. To me, like they were still very much deeper positions, while Asensio was a bit higher at the 3. And although Modric I think had some really nice combinations on the right flank, higher up the pitch, but I think for the most part they were a bit deeper. But I think in terms of what he could apply consistently, a more diversified attack. The counter attack was very efficient. I think. Modric. I think one thing we learned is also like, I don't know who I was talking to about this. I don't know if it was one of you guys or someone else, but we often talk about I guess what do we do if Casemiro's not there? And anytime we've been forced to play without Casemiro and kind of like a double pivot, but it kind of morphs between a midfield trio and a double pivot. And in-game kind of changes and people they're kind of interchangeable pieces. But anytime we've had to do that, we've looked pretty good. I think. And I think defensively, there are definitely ways to mask Casemiro's absence, whether it's with possession, whether it's with the counter press, whether it's with a packed midfield and kind of just Kovacic helping out, Asensio or Isco helping out. I think all of those things are learning points. I don't know, because in the past we've gotten excited about one game where we're like, oh my god, we're blown away by this. Why can't we see this, constantly throughout the season? And we just don't really see it again. And there's actually a question coming up about this, which is interesting. I think we'll get into. But I think some of the things that he can apply consistently may not be applicable also because we're not going to be playing a dead Sevilla every week. And that's another thing.
I would also know. I mean, for whatever it's worth, like as Ohm said at the beginning of the show, how the kind of slightly more rigid structure allows you to pass out of a press a little bit easier and maybe facilitates some of that direct counterattacking. That kind of knowing that there's going to be someone on that flank or in that pocket of space most of the time allows players to kind of anticipate and create know where they want to go with the ball as soon as they get it, which is a little bit harder to do with a system based on one person having complete freedom and then other people kind of trying to mask that deficiency of space when that person isn't where they were supposed to be. That is one thing that I would hope Zidane at least kind of goes into that an analysis that includes like, hey, like why did we get some of the impressive counterattacks that we did? And it's because the players were in position not just to intercept the pass, but also to release someone that from a place that they knew they were going to be going forward. Ohm, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that was a pretty solid assessment of what I was going to say.
Okay, so Mark Reedy asked us, did this setup remind you of Mourinho's Madrid? Strong defensive shape and building counters. Is this 5-0 as important as the 3-0 against Atletico last year?
I don't know if it reminded me of Mourinho's Madrid because he had a really, really specific way of playing with Madrid. And I could talk about that for hours. But I think the counters were similar, but I think they were similar because counters are similar to counters. I think you could have made more of the comparison if we played in a 4-2-3-1 and had an attacking midfielder in the center and Ronaldo was who he was back then. But I think the idea of having players in position up the field and having outlets to release them quickly and attack the back line and play decisive through balls through the opposition defense, I think that's what's similar to, but like structure wise and like some finer tactical points, I don't think it's necessarily that similar. And I don't know if I'd say this is as important as a 3-0 against Atletico because that 3-0 against Atletico knocked them out of the title race. If he's referring to the league match, but I still think this 5-0 win is important because it's that flood of goals that we needed, right? We got luck going our way, and it feels like that explosion that we've been talking about that will come. And we referenced expected goals on this earlier, that how we weren't finishing at the rate that we should be. Well, now it feels like that we're finally here and that players are going to start finding the back of the net regularly.
I think the parallel you could take from the 3-0 against Atletico last season is that game was November last season at the Calderon. And up until that point, there was a lot of criticism surrounding Real Madrid for not playing well. And that was the one game where everyone was like, oh, if this is the best Real Madrid have played all season, this is the first time they've actually looked legitimately good and not just lucky to win. And in, I guess, kind of this game against Sevilla had the same vibe, where this is like the best we've looked in a long time. Arguably since the Super Cup, although like I think one of the journalists asked Zidane after the game, was that the best half Real Madrid played this season? He said no. He said it was only our best in terms of goals, but he thought at the very least, Real Madrid were as good against Dortmund and Sociedad in the first half, if not better. But I think overall, there was, in terms of kind of where we were in the season and the slump that we're in and where this game might take us to another level and help us see that extra gear the team might hit in the springtime, I think in that sense, the parallel can be drawn a little bit.
I think that's fair, Kiyan. Jimmy Obeid asks us, all right, so notes, great game for the boys today. This was the team we had hoped for after the complete destruction of Barca at the beginning of the season. As a disclaimer, I would like to say that Isco is one of the best players in the world, but judging from today's performance, I sincerely believe that his unlimited freedom is more hindrance than help. You can see that by how comfortable Kroos and Modric looked. I even believe that his free role even hindered Ronaldo to a certain extent. What do you guys think? Should we limit Isco's roaming ability to strictly the final third?
I mean, yeah, we discussed this before, right? I think we all agree that his unlimited freedom thing it's not something that's benefiting the team overall. In some instances, it is. I think Isco enjoys it a lot, but I think it would be better if he was restricted to the final third to answer the question directly, because it's a lot of times, right, like it's those unnecessary movements where he comes to receive the ball from like Ramos or Varane, and Kroos or Modric is already there, and you're like, well, what's the point of that? Who's taking Isco's place up the field in between the lines? So I think we covered that a lot, and that idea is that I mean, the roaming should be restricted to an extent because the team just isn't able to adjust to it well enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I don't know how many times we can talk about this. I think you and I tried to talk about this as much as we could last week. I know Gabe wasn't here, but we also tried to clarify that it's not necessarily Isco's fault. And, clearly Isco's an amazing player. Like, we have no doubts about this. It's not like the same people like a few weeks ago were just going apeshit about how good he was. And it kind of, especially like it peaked against Italy in the World Cup qualifiers, where he was unbelievable. He was on another level. Last season, he was amazing in the diamond. I think the difference was that this season, there were a couple things that are different. One is that Real Madrid's press hasn't been as good. Passing out of the back hasn't been as good. The decision-making hasn't been as good. And also Isco himself, he's a bit... It seems like Modric, Casemiro, and Kroos are kind of in this stagnant, confused, almost not immobile, but they're kind of in this stagnant line horizontally, and Isco is kind of going wherever he wants, and that has domino effects defensively because the team doesn't know where he is, and any defensive sequence he's always in different place. I think if you want to talk about this game, Asensio had a nice balance against Sevilla, where he was dangerous on the left, and his roaming was he was always there as an outlet. Like, just like go look back at 11 Tegan. Well, I actually never know how to actually pronounce it. Whatever it is, 11 Tegan, or whatever. The passing map he puts up, it's very clear. Like, Asensio does a really great job of providing an outlet and channeling through. Because a lot of times when Modric and Kroos were looking to break the press, they had the final stage to get out of it was to find Asensio as the outlet, and Sevilla were completely broken at that point. I think Asensio did a really good job to provide himself in the right moments in the game, in the right spaces to kind of help bind the team.
Yep.
11 Tegan?
Tegan? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Unless she is going to come on here and complain, I think we can keep pronouncing this the right way, or whatever the hell we want. I don't have anything else to add to that. I think you guys are both right. So,
by the way, none of it really matters, but the players I couldn't think of when I was talking about Sevilla, who they lost, one was Vitolo.
Yes.
And then Sami Nasri was another big one.
And their manager, of course.
Yeah,
right.
And of course,
Shea Katiri asked us, we've been saying for a while that even though we didn't get the result, we showed a lot of improvements. Today we showed that we've been right. I just wish Benzema would have scored. This team looks nothing like the team from a month ago. They were comfortable possessing and carrying the ball and taking calculated risks in passing. I think Cristiano's Ballon d'Or gave him a confidence boost. My two criticisms are, one, Zidane should have brought in Ceballos and Llorente during the halftime, and the last sub should have been Mayoral. It's not like Isco's getting enough playing time. It's not like Isco isn't getting enough playing time. Mayoral could use more, though. All right, let's just quickly deal with that. We haven't talked about the subs. The second half was Madrid on cruise control, folks. I mean, I got to tell you, I thought both Ceballos and Llorente looked good. I don't think it's a absurd criticism to say that they could have come on way earlier given the scoreline, but making halftime substitutions it does have two kind of implicit things that come with it. First of all, halftime substitutions also indicate either that you're looking for a big change or that you feel like you've got the game locked up and want to hang on to your players, and that can lead the other team to do stuff that's like not super smart. I mean, look, I think it would have been fine to bring him on, but I understand why you wait 10 minutes into the second half to bring on someone. I'll just add that.
One of the most heartbreaking things in my life was when Marcos Llorente started warming up. I was like the only one in the stadium who noticed, and I was like getting really giddy. And then when he was the first sub to come on, the Bernabeu booed, and it wasn't a thing about Marcos personally. It was because Isco wasn't the first sub, and they started booing and they started chanting Isco's name, and like of all the things they could have done, like booing Zidane in the past, Raul in the past, Bale, Ronaldo, this was the worst thing they've ever done.
I just want to add that I would have booed as well because Marcos Llorente sucks.
Wow.
Hey, Arvin will never appear on the podcast again.
Yeah, you're fired. Let's see. The second point, except for Marcelo's cross for Benzema, I don't understand why this team, which was second to none in set pieces and crossing, can't do either. I'm very happy and very extremely impressed by Vallejo, but where's Bale? All right, so yeah, I mean, I don't really agree with the criticism of the crossing. I mean, Madrid has hit the post a lot from crosses, and they've scored set. In fact, the first goal in this match was a set piece goal, so I don't really know what's going on with that.
I think over the season we've only scored like 2 set piece goals.
No, that's right. But they've both been in the last couple of weeks, so it's partial with the recovery of the side and their kind of uptake in playing. And Madrid's crossing, it's not a shock that Madrid's crossing has looked toothless for the last month because their best crosser arguably has been on the sideline in Bale, and we're forgetting how good he is at putting those balls in exactly the right place for the players that he has played with now for 4 years and knows so well, who both happen to also be extremely good at heading those balls in particular Cristiano Ronaldo, but also Benzema, who's not bad with his head. So I mean, I think there are ways to explain some of it, but I agree that it's a surprise. Like, there's also a surprise that Ramos hasn't scored yet this season after everything. I mean, we can blame Ohm for that, I guess, but like, but no, like, I think that all that stuff will come along, at least with just the basic idea that they're a team that scored that many isn't necessarily a huge, like, that may be an outlier, but going from a team that scored a ton on set pieces and on crosses to a team that hasn't scored very much, you have to have a lot of outlier on both directions. So I think there'll be regression to some sort of. I think someone's
Yeah, I gotta go.
Fire alarm.
That's a fucking fire alarm, guys. End it without. Leave this in. This will be funny anyway. All right.
We're definitely
bye.
That was God mad at you for criticizing your own. Hope you're safe on.
Crisis averted. Okay. That was too good, though. Too good. All right. Solomon Ortiz. Hey, Kiyan and Gabe. Well, you got us. Only us this time. What is your gut instinct right now if you were to make a betting call? Does Eden Hazard come to Real Madrid next summer? My favorite player I want to see play for Real Madrid. Let's see. Out of all the rumored... All right, let's just answer that question first. To be quite honest, man, I think that's... there's definitely a chance. I think it depends a little bit on how the season goes for Madrid and whether they feel like they need to make some big changes in the squad.
Probably how the season goes for Madrid, but also how the season goes for Chelsea. I don't know exactly what goes to Hazard's mind and what motivates him. And also how well he plays in the World Cup, because we know that Madrid are really obsessed with getting the standout player from World Cups. True. So we'll feeling things on transfers are so like hit or miss. I mean, my gut feeling is that I don't know whether it's Hazard or somebody else, but my gut feeling is that I don't think we'll see both Bale and Benzema here next year. That's just a gut feeling, which could be proven wrong. But I actually do agree. I think, in my gut feeling, and whoever really knows, but my gut feeling is it'll be Benzema who makes way, given his poor form this year. And it's easier to explain away injuries than it is to explain away, I think, poor form, and especially in a player who's now 30, whereas Bale is still younger. But yeah, I mean, who knows? And then adding someone like Hazard, possibly. I think it's possible Madrid will go for a striker, like a more pure striker also. I just don't know. So the second question, but yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And especially if he has a standout campaign with Chelsea and
and has a standout World Cup especially. But I think it's also possible that he does both of those and Madrid decide that he's too much money or whatever. All right, out of all the rumored names out there being linked for a new attacking line next year, who is your desired 1 to 2 transfers that you want to see play for Madrid? Who do you think Florentino and Zidane will get? So this is a tough question, I think, because what I'd really like to see happen is for Bale to get well and just be himself for the second half of the season so that he locks in that spot, because I really do think that Madrid's attacking line is I think it's just manifestly better with him in it, and Madrid has played better with him in it in the lineup this season too. Like when he's been on the pitch, like Madrid just seem to have more bite in everything they're doing. So I do really enjoy him, but I don't know, Kiyan, who's on your list? I have a couple of names, but some of them are more realistic than others.
We could bring Cohen Trout back from them.
Oh, that's it. That's all that we. Yeah, good point.
I don't know. Again, these transfer things, like it's so hard to talk about these things for next summer because we're so far removed from it right now. We're so far away from it right now. We just have no idea how the season will pan out, and a lot of these things are dictated about how the season will go. And as we've known from previous seasons,
no, they really are.
Yeah, as we've known from previous seasons, also the way that Real Madrid starts the season is not indicative of how they will finish the season either. But kind of know that the team will probably bolster the depth up front with Ronaldo aging, Benzema's dropping in form, Bale's health. It almost seems certain to me that somebody will come. In terms of wish list, it's hard, and there's a lot of great players in the world. We know that we have our favorites. We loved Mbappe last season, and Hazard's a great player. It's easier for me to kind of predict what will happen long term in a weird way. Like I kind of almost feel like Mbappe would eventually come, like during his peak. I kind of almost know that Odegaard will take one or two more loan spells and then come back into the team.
Yeah,
as he's trying to kickstart his career. So we have kind of those ideas in our head, but in terms of who the signings are, it's really difficult, I find.
Yeah, my feeling is I agree entirely with both points, but in terms of names, like we've all the people that Madrid have been linked to are possibilities. I think I like Werner. I like, look, I think that Madrid and Neymar are going to keep making googly eyes at each other for a while, and I think there is I'd put it at 30% chance that Neymar plays for Real Madrid before his career is over. And I know that's strange to say, but
30 is high.
But they've been
inconceivable. That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying, man. I think they've been making googly eyes at each other. That's why, these rumors keep popping up about a potential move. They're not just being fabricated, is what I'm saying. I think that, this is the kind of, thing that could happen later in his career. Obviously a couple years down the line, but, I also think it's, I definitely see Mbappe also. I think it could be also that Madrid make a move for a more established striker who they feel like would just kind of start. I think, for example, Lewandowski has always made no secret of his interest in Madrid, and Aubameyang has also. What?
I think both him and Aubameyang are on the wrong side of their peak. I think that's.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying that maybe they feel like they want to go back to that model, or look, who knows? There could be a move for someone from England. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer because I feel like we should, but it's just honestly too early in this season to have a thought about exactly how this is going to go, because so many ways the season could turn out, to the point where if Madrid does a three-peat as Champions League champions, which is not super likely, but definitely not out of the question, then I don't think that there's going to be much change to this roster. That you will see maybe a young striker brought in, but I don't think someone that they're going to expect to start. So, Nick DeStefane, fucking finally. This is the definition of a thank God game. It's games like this that make me want to see Asensio in the starting lineup every game. Also thought it was Big Ben's best game of the year. Does this game prove that we need to usher in the rotation policy we saw more of last year? Also, who was your favorite player or player of the match? Thanks for everything. It was definitely a thank God game. It was about time Madrid really suited up and did something like that. Also, yeah, I mean, good to see Asensio really kick back into form after his injury. Player of the match for me, Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, he was everywhere. I think Asensio is definitely in with the shout, though, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right, I think. Ronaldo, Asensio will probably the two standouts.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, we mentioned the defenders.
Yeah.
Ashraf was very impressive, like, all that. All right, I think that about wraps it up. Kiyan, you're going to be in Madrid for a couple more weeks, so we're going to have more access to the club. Very excited to read everything that you're writing out there. We'll be back for your midweek show. I guess we'll be talking about the Club World Cup.
Yes.
So send in fun questions.
Like, oh my God, we gotta talk.
It sucks. The Club World Cup sucks.
I haven't even checked the time zone stuff and like what time I have to wake up, but that's another headache.
It'll probably be in your. I mean, whatever. It's gonna be in the evening for you. They're playing Al Jazeera from Egypt in their. I didn't even like that's. I just literally. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Not the news network. It's the club. So.
I'd be surprised if they're playing a bunch of news anchors.
A bunch of reporters. The Al Jazeera five-a-side squad versus Real Madrid. Okay. So we will be back for your midweek show for all our patrons, and if not, we'll catch you next weekend. Until then, Ala Madrid.